Good evening, everybody. My name is Soten. I'm a senior student here, and I'm showing up here for a Dharma talk way earlier than I intended. I gave a talk, I think, just 4 or 5 weeks ago, and but there was an opening and there was no one to fill it, and my arm got lightly twisted. And there had been something I'd left out of my Dharma talk that bothered me at the time, that it had gone unspoken. And I thought, well, it's probably worth a Dharma talk. So that talk was about this past year. I've had a lot of intense experiences of the medical kind. I had a couple of strokes back in February, from which I've completely recovered. And practicing with that, what's the form of Zen practice when you've had a stroke, for example, was part of what I wanted to talk about, and did. And a koan I brought up during that talk was the third case from the Book of Serenity. Master Ma was unwell, and that goes something like this. Master Ma was unwell. The monastery superintendent asked, "Master, how has your health been in recent days?" And the great teacher said, "Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha." And that's kind of, I think, particularly as Zen practitioners get older, that's a really important koan to encounter, and a really rich one. And it informed a lot of how I dealt with first the strokes, as I had talked about, and then I also talked about having torn my rotator cuff, and I had, when I appeared on screen, I had I was still in a sling post surgical repair, and was in a pretty good mood for having gotten to that point. And so as the clock ticked by, where's the clock? Can I have a clock? I always need to have a clock. I didn't really get to talk about the pain component of those situations or my recovery. Thank you, Roshi. And I have more to say about that now, several weeks later. I would recommend for anyone who's trying to practice with pain, severe, acute, or chronic, there was a really interesting and rich series of emails on May 15th on the Zendo listserv. If you Google villagezendo.io, whatever the form of that is, and the word pain, May 15th and 16th, there's a really rich thread. Unsurprisingly, there's a lot of people in the Zendo dealing with severe, acute, and chronic pain. And I'll mention some of those resources. I also, as a doctor, have to sort of start off by saying, if you have some sort of acute or chronic pain, you should make sure to see that it's assessed clinically, because while one may be able to sit with pain and practice with pain, and it may be your new normal, until you know that it's your new normal, it could be the sign of something that can be treated and needs to be treated. And so I would be careful about that and not simply be brave because you're a strong Zen student. Pain is usually a sign of something that needs attention. And at the same time, there are, I'm known in the Zendo for sort of being free with advice that if you have a pain situation and options for pain relief, including pharmaceuticals, are available, then one should consider those. One should also consider things like yoga practice and acupuncture, and find the things that potentially work for you. It's not necessarily a positive, that you can cope with pain in the face of it, because there may be ways to relieve it. And Buddhist practice is about relieving suffering. So, in my family, we would say, don't be too German about this, because we're Germans. And when I think about pain in Zen practice, I think about when I first came into Zen practice and read about people and their knees on extended retreats. And when I started doing extended retreats and discovered what knee pain was all about. And I, on occasion, tried to shift my focus of attention to the pain, to become one with the pain, and etc. I don't think I was ever very successful at that. And in general, I would seek to move away from the pain. The next period, I would be in a different position. 1 foot up, 1 foot down, or into seiza. Now, as I get older, into a chair. I'm not ashamed of sitting in a chair if my knees hurt too much or my back hurts too much, etc. So even in long years of Zen practice, I'm more than happy to move away from my pain if I can. But with the shoulder situation, I've encountered a really different and difficult situation that has surprised me. And I'm realizing that the pain of chronic injury is different than the pain of acute injury. I have a clinical condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So there are probably people who will hear this talk who also have it, where your collagen is sort of loose and fluffy and tears easily. And so I've had people in the Zendo have seen me come in with canes and splints and all sorts, broken this and torn that. That sort of acute pain has been okay for me to deal with, because I just know that there's the acute situation, and day by day it gets better, and you heal and you go on and sort of return back to where you were. With my torn rotator cuff, and it's not the first time I've torn my rotator cuff, this time it was so severe it was going to need surgery. And what got me through the first 3 months of not sleeping because of the pain of shoulders hurt more when you lie down because of the way gravity pulls at your shoulder, I kept on and I kept good spirits because I knew I was headed to the operation that would fix this. And then when I woke up from the operation and the nerve block started to wear off about 12 hours early, I was okay with that too, because I had Percocet on hand, and I knew that for the next 3 or 4 days, that was going to be an important part of my pain control, and a successful one. And I had learned when I was in medical school, when I was younger, I would eschew taking anything, aspirin, Tylenol, unless I had a migraine, in which case I knew, take one of your mother's going to give you a codeine, take that codeine. But otherwise, minor aches and pains, no. But then I got to medical school and I had all these patients who were refusing the things I could prescribe to them to help them deal with their hospitalization and their surgery or whatever they were there for. And I would get angry at them for not taking advantage of what I was making available. And I started to think, oh, maybe I shouldn't be so rigid about this myself. And so post-surgery, I was really grateful to have these meds that could help alleviate that pain. And when by day 4 or 5, I didn't need them as much, I was happy to have that clarity of mind come back, because I was no longer taking my Percocet. And the pain was starting to be manageable, and it was fading day by day. And that's around the time when I gave my talk. And I was feeling okay about this and optimistic about it. And then I started doing physical therapy because the pain was sufficiently lessened that I could do the physical therapy. And it was the early part of the post-op recovery where you have to start doing it, because otherwise you'll develop frozen shoulder. And so lifting my arm like this hurts. I couldn't have done it the day I gave my Dharma talk. But a few days after my Dharma talk, I could lift it up to here. And now I can lift it up to here. And that's pretty much pain-free. But if I tried to raise it that high, just on its own, That's painful. And suddenly I found myself in a zone that I sort of knew existed, but I had never really experienced. There is no near-term end to the aches and soreness I feel in my shoulder and my arms, because every improvement we make in physical therapy, every extra 5 degrees of movement, range of motion, every slight increase, I can now lift 2 pounds doing a bicep curl. Ooh, 2 pounds. I'm moving into a zone where I can't function. And so now it's been another month of chronic ache and chronic soreness that's always the same degree of intensity. And it will be like this for the next 3 or 4 months. Now I have an expectation that that will end. And I think that makes it harder. And this is one of the things I've started to notice, that my expectations for what the pain should be are part of what's conditioning how I'm responding to the pain and how I'm living with the pain or fighting against the pain. And I'll be perfectly honest, I could have given my talk today about slipping back into a depression, which I haven't really experienced. I used to routinely slip into depressions when I was younger. I haven't felt a need for an antidepressant in probably a decade. And today I called my doc to talk about getting a prescription, because this is just wearing me down to the bone in a way that I was not expecting and not prepared for. Now, one of the things that I discovered when I was lying there post-op, and I was no longer taking the painkillers, but I still had intense moments of pain right at the surgical sites. It was a very specific site. For the very first time, and I don't think I could possibly have done this 10, 20, 30 years ago of practice. I've been doing Zen practice in my fashion for about 35 years now. I was able to bring my attention to the pain and have moments where I could register it as a sensation that didn't have any content. And that got me really excited, because I thought, oh, wow, okay, you can experience pain and it doesn't have to be painful. So I played with that and I practiced that a little bit, and it didn't happen often. It wasn't a thing I could sustain for a very long time, but I could do it. I can't do it now. This chronic ache and soreness, it's just wearing me down. While I was starting to deal with this, I turned on Apple TV and discovered the Michael J. Fox movie from last year, the documentary about how he's dealt with having Parkinson's. It's a really powerful, beautiful film, and extraordinarily well done, the way they use old footage of him in movies and TV shows to recreate actual moments that he's describing from memory. And he talks about the difficulties he had dealing with getting the diagnosis of Parkinson's, how he turned to alcohol for a long time, what that did to his relationships, how he, got past that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And starts talking about how he started realizing it was time to be an activist, and that this was actually not the end of his life, but the beginning of a richer life for him. And at one point, he sort of, I think the moment was he sort of flinches, and the director, who's a lot of the film is just sort of his face on screen, and the director is questioning him directly, and he flinches and he said, "Oh, did something hurt?" And he says, "Oh, I'm always in pain. I'm always in agony." And the director's sort of like, "But we've done hours of interviews. You've never said anything about it." And he describes the intensity of the pain and how it feels like he's being hit with electric jolts constantly, and it relates to the Parkinson's, and it's not an uncommon thing in Parkinson's. And he says, "So yes, it hurts a lot, but what you learn is that nobody gives a shit. It's just life. It doesn't matter. You suck it up and you move on. And there might be a story to tell in it, but only that. There's no chit that you can present to a window for a refund." And I thought, I'm sitting here feeling really badly for myself because I've got this soreness. And I've just spent an hour and a half watching this guy having really intense agony and never betraying it and never talking about it and never feeling sorry for himself like I'm feeling sorry for myself. And I thought, well, sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha, that's one thing, you know. I can rest in my Buddha nature and whine as much as I want. And that's just me really indulging in moon-faced Buddha. And I can do it in a real deep sort of way. But this seems to be something that goes beyond that in some fashion. And then I realized this was kind of familiar. And I thought of a different koan. This one is from, is the sixth case from the Blue Cliff record. Yunmen said, I don't ask you about before the 15th day. Try to say something about after the 15th day. And then Yunmen himself answers for everyone. Every day is a good day. And I remember when I got that koan in the first place, I realized this sounded familiar to me. And there's an old Hasidic tale, one of my favorite Hasidic rabbis from a very early generation named Reb Zusia. And his brother, Reb Elimelech of Lizensk, was extremely powerful and extremely charismatic, had thousands of followers, and was very rich. And his students come to him at one point and say, we understand the biblical verse, you should love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. We understand how you do that on a good day, but how do you do that on a bad day? And Reb Elimelech says, you should go talk to my cousin Zusia, my brother Zusia. And so they go looking for Zusia. And the thing about Zusia is he had no money, because whenever he met anybody who was a pauper, whatever he had, he gave them, because he felt he was kind of rich and everything. So he never had anything. So they finally find him sleeping. It's winter. And they find him sleeping behind the stove in the synagogue. And they gather around on the floor and they wait for him to wake up. And when he rouses, they tell him their question, and that his brother said to come to ask him. He said, so how do you practice this on a bad day? And he says, I don't know. I've never had a bad day. And the third time I encountered this was, this will not surprise people who know me, my mother, who was deep into her Parkinson's of her own at this point. And I went to visit her in her home, and I said, how are you today? And she said, I'm having a good day. And I said, every time I ask you that, you tell me you're having a good day. And she said, because every day is a good day. One of the things that, one of the resources in that email thread, someone mentioned a video online, I think it was Fusho Hoshi, mentioned a video online from John Kabat-Zinn, the mindfulness teacher, and where he talks about using mindfulness in chronic pain. And he just gives a few short little examples. And but in a summary statement, not the techniques. And if you're having issues, I recommend digging into some of this stuff online. He says, quote, talking about research into pain management. The greater the intensity of the distressing sensations, the more awareness strategies are beneficial and the less distraction strategies are effective. Tuning in trumps tuning out. For the kinds of stuff I've been dealing with, I'm starting to realize that tuning in is the way to cope with it. And that, oh, I'm apparently in that phase of life that my mother told me lays ahead, where things are just gonna hurt. All the cliches turn out to be true, including getting old isn't for sissies. I usually like to give Dharma talks on koans where I've passed them, at least on that go-round, because then I feel like I'm qualified to say something, and I realize, oh, this is a koan I don't think I'm ever going to pass. And that's okay too, because the best koans are always worth revisiting. So I'll just finish with this little poem, which probably is too long, but I didn't get a chance to edit it. The phases of pain may shift. Now a full orange moon rising angry above the horizon, then a yellow gibbous moon climbing the sky, or now a silver hook hovering. But where is this moon when I turn my back on it? Oh, look how the night world shimmers right before me. Let's explore.